Hi and welcome to this DCP web tutorial. In today's tutorial I'm going to be giving you a beginner's guide to using Magix Movie Edit Pro 2021. Okay, so on my desktop I've got this folder, and inside this folder I've got 7 video clips which I downloaded from the Pexels website. So let me just show you how to download one example. So let's go to the web browser and we'll go to this website called Pexels, and I'm going to put a link to this particular URL in the YouTube description. So when you go to this website, let's just go to the home page, for example. You can search for videos and photos here. So let's just say we're searching for example, lakes, for example. So you can see lake here. If I click it, as default, it's going to show you images, but you can click video here. And we want to download video content. So here's loads of different videos. There's 859 for lake, but you can type any keyword you want and find any type of pictures. Now you might already have video content filmed on your phone or on some other device, so you can use that content as well. But maybe try and download some example clips and then you can follow me in this video tutorial. The actual content you download doesn't really matter too much, right? But there is one thing that we need to make sure we do. So if we just scroll down, let's just say, for example, I want this picture here, right? Of this water and this lake. So if I click on it, when I want to download this video clip, you need to click on this little drop down arrow here and make sure you download the original 1920 by 1080. So just click free download here. All the content is for free, so you can download it. It's 41 meg, so it's not a tiny file by any means, but we can just download that extra video clip and drag and drop it into here. So now really we've got 8 videos. So I like to relabel the videos, rename them. So I'm just going to rename it to 8. So we've got them all nicely set up in this folder on my desktop. Alright, so we've got 0s 1 to 8. So download any video clips you want. You can I would suggest you download 8 because I've got 8 here as well. And then you can follow me in this tutorial. Okay, so before we launch the software, I'm going to open up the web browser, and in the YouTube description I'm going to put my affiliate link for Magix Movie Edit Pro. So if you decide to purchase this software, it would be great if you can use that particular affiliate link, because then I get a little commission every time you purchase the software. And here you can see at the bottom of this page, you can see there's Movie Edit Pro. So it costs $59.99 and it tells you got like up to 900 effects and titles. The plus version, you get up to 1500 titles and effects. And then the premium version, which is what I'm using, you get some like 360 cam editing if you want to do that. You get this route travel. You can edit up to export up to 8K, and you still get the same sort of amount of transitions and so forth. Yeah. So you can go and decide which version is best for you by these 3, but I'm using the premium version, which costs £109. So just check the link in the YouTube description and you'll see my affiliate link there. It'll be great if you can use that if you decide to purchase this software after watching this tutorial. So let's close this down and let's go ahead and open up Magix Movie Edit Pro. So I'm using 2021 premium version, and when you load up Magix, this is the first screen that you're typically going to see. Is this little intro splash screen, right? So it asks you for a project name. You can put a name in here for whatever you want to call the project. So I'm going to call this tutorial example, right? That's why I'm going to name the project. So it's good to name your projects. And then it says movie settings. Do you want it to be HD TV, so like HD size? So you've got social media, you've got 360. I'm going to be making some other tutorials about social media, but we're going to stick with HD, right? HD resolution. And we're going to run it at 30 frames a second. If you do something, maybe if you're filming on your camera or your mobile phone and you're filming at like 60 frames a second or a higher frame rate, you may want to change the frame rate. But typically 30 frames a second should be pretty good. Then in this drop down menu you get some simple options. Do you want it to be 720p, this different HD resolution here, or 1920 by 1080? So I normally film all my content or edit all my content in 1920 by 1080. That's a typical HD resolution, and that's all I'm going to really set in here. I'm not going to choose any of these other options. We may maybe go through these in a future tutorial, but for now I'm just going to click the create project button here. Okay, so this is Magix Movie Edit Pro loaded up, and you can see there's a screen up here. So this is like where we do our editing or viewing our content. We can see that in this screen on the left hand side. Over here we've got various tabs and we're going to go through those in more detail, but the first one is called import, and down here you've got what we call the timeline. Now as default, it's not set to the timeline, it's set to the storyboard mode. And you've got these different views of your content. You can see scene view, and then you can see timeline, and if you're using Movie Edit Pro Plus, then you can see like multicam mode, and there's a few other options in here. But for now I would suggest that you just set it to the timeline mode, because that's where I do 99% of all of my content editing in Magix Movie Edit Pro. I'll use the timeline mode here. And up here in the corner, this right hand corner, we can see the video clips, right? There's 1 to 8. So if I were to go back to my desktop and open up this folder, you can see 1 to 8 of pieces of content. If you had images in here or audio, those will also show in Magix Movie Edit Pro. So I'm going to minimize this folder, open up Movie Edit Pro one more time, and we need to navigate to this folder. I just want to show you how to navigate to that particular folder. Here you can see folder tree. So this is the folder tree, and you can see that I'm on my desktop. So normally I'll click on desktop and then I'll find that particular project, I'll open it, and now I can see all of the video content inside of this little folder here. So this just allows us to drag and drop onto the timeline. You can drag and drop directly from the folder as well, so you can drag and drop the video clips this way, but it's nice and easy to just have it open here. You can just drag and drop. So let's put our first video clip into the timeline. There's a couple of options here. You can click here, display options, and you can say large icons, and when you display it as large icons, it will take a thumbnail. You can actually see what the content looks like inside. I prefer to see it this way because I can see the thumbnail, but sometimes if you've got lots and lots of content, you may want to see it in a list. You may want to see it in the, like the detailed view with like the file size and the file type, or you may just want to see it as large icons. I prefer large icons. So we've got these numbered in a specific order. I haven't really decided to put them in this particular order, so you can drag and drop your video clips in any order that you like. You can hover over it and you can click this play button, and you can see the video clip playing inside of the video player here. So sometimes it's useful if you've got two clips that look very similar, but you're deciding between which one needs to be selected. You can easily click the play button, and then you can just play it straight on the timeline here or in the video player here. So let's stop this, and the first thing we want to do is take this first video clip and just drag and drop it into Magix Movie Edit Pro. So the first thing it says to me is the active movie resolution is 1920 by 1080 at 30 frames a second, and the resolution of this video clip is different and it has a different frame rate. Do we want to adjust our project or not adjust it? I'm going to say do not adjust, because I want to keep my project at 1920 by 1080 and at 30 frames a second. So when you drag and drop a video clip into Movie Edit Pro, it's going to check the default settings that we first selected at the beginning when we created the project. And when we drag and drop a video clip into Movie Edit Pro that doesn't match those settings, it's going to ask us, do we want to adjust our project, or do we just we don't want to adjust it? So I don't want to adjust it. So here we can see the video content here in Magix Movie Edit Pro, right? The first video piece of content. And here we can see it on the timeline. Now, as default, you're quite zoomed into the Movie Edit Pro on the timeline. So you can see this is really, this particular video clip, if we were to select it, we can see it's really roughly around 10 seconds. It's 10 seconds in duration here. And if we hold down the control key and use the mouse wheel, so hold down the control key and use the mouse wheel to rotate up and down, and we can zoom in and out of the timeline. And normally when I'm working on quite a lot of video clips, I'll drag and drop them in, and I want to be zoomed out quite far, maybe about here somewhere, so I can see more of the timeline going across here, so we can edit more content and see more content a bit more accurately. Okay, so at the moment we've got one video clip on the timeline, and if we were to click on that video clip, it goes yellow, right? If you look up here, you'll see there's a little red dot, and this red dot represents that particular clip is being used on the timeline somewhere or within this project. And in fact, we should save this, right? So let's go to File, Save Project As, and we'll go to my desktop. Let's go to this project. Where is it? Here it is, and it's called Tutorial Example, and this is the file format for Movie Edit Pro here. Let's save our work, would be wise. Now, when we save our project, you'll see it listed in here. You can see, like, this is an example of that project that we just saved, and we've got all the rest of the video clips. Now we want to get a second video clip inside of this timeline, so let's just click on this one and drag and drop it. In fact, let's think about this. Right, so we've got this like snow sort of mountain thing going on here. So maybe what we'll do, I think actually it doesn't really matter too much. Let's grab this second video clip and drag and drop that onto the timeline. Right, so now we've got these two video clips. Now remember, I said this sort of this magnet icon, it's like a magnet shape, and it says, when we hover over it, it says object grid, right? So if I turn this off and then when I drag this video clip, it won't snap to the previous clip, right? It won't snap there. But if we turn this one on and then we drag it, it will snap to the end of this video clip. So this is quite useful when we're trying to position content, because normally when I drag a video clip onto the timeline, you could drag it all the way there and it will snap automatically, but normally I drag a gap, just see what the video clip is about. You can double click in it and play it in here and see it. But this is the video clip, and we've got this gap here, so we're going to close this gap. So we just click on the clip and drag it so it snaps to the end. So if we click play now, we'll see something called a jump cut, right? We can stop it, and we can take this timeline cursor here, and we can left click on it and drag it ourselves manually to see the transition. And we call this a jump cut. It's just one scene to another scene. And when you got like video content that is very similar, so imagine if you're filming, I don't know, someone speaking, and you've got two different angles of them speaking and you want to jump cut between them, then a jump cut is pretty good. But sometimes you want to put a transition, a nice transition between these, right? So I'm going to hold down the control key and zoom in a little bit, just zoom in one element or one increment, and I'm going to save this, and I'm going to left click and drag this clip away, because what I want to do is if I move this timeline cursor across to the end, we'll see that, let's just click here, we'll see that it's actually 10 seconds in duration right here. So what I want to do is drag this timeline cursor back so that it's at 9 seconds. And you can use the you can use the arrows on your keyboard to get it to exactly 9 seconds here. Can you see 9 seconds? So when I take this video clip and drag and overlap it, it will snap to the timeline cursor, and I know that this duration now is exactly 1 second crossfade, right? Because the original clip was 10 seconds long, I moved the timeline cursor to 9 seconds, and when I drag this clip, it's going to be a 1 second overlap. So if I were to just move the timeline cursor here, you can actually just left click to position it. I'll move it closer to this transition, click play, and now they will crossfade. So as default, whenever you drag a clip over another one, the default transition is a crossfade. But we've got loads of options in Magix Movie Edit Pro. And if we go to templates here, and one thing you'll notice is that there's two red dots here now, because that represents there's two video clips being used. But I'm going to go to template, and inside template, we've got all these different types of transitions, right? You've got some crazy ones, you've got some nice ones. I don't use all of them personally, but I think movement basic and shape, these are the ones that I normally use quite a lot. And normally I would only use maybe one or two of these different types of transitions. I don't use loads of different transitions in my work, maybe one or two per project, but it's entirely your choice. It's for you to now go and experiment, right? And if you want to see what a transition looks like, you can click the play button and it will show you an example. So the A and B represent two different video clips. So when I click play, it says this is A and this is B, and you've got this sort of circle shape transition. So if we want to use that transition, let's drag and drop it. But when we drag and drop it, we need to drag and drop on top of this current transition, yeah, the crossfade one. So we'll take this this transition, and drag and drop it into that position. Now you can see the transition. So when we go back and click play, we can see that transition working. So if you don't like that transition, you can just change it. So you can pick any of these other ones. So let's say this one, for example, or let's take this one. We can drag and drop that into the same position. It's going to replace that transition. It will replace it with the new one. So you've got this one here, which looks pretty cool. And you've got all of these to experiment. So obviously I'm not going to go through all of them one by one, but we can just drag and drop a few different ones and you can see what they look like. They're really nice and they work pretty well, right? They look pretty good. So you can press the stop button to stop that. And you can also grab the timeline handle and you can drag over it slowly to see what it looks like as well. So you can manually drag over it to see what it looks like this. You can go to shapes, and sometimes shapes ones are quite nice as well. You've got these different shapes. So if you want to do like a heart thing, you can do that. You can do like a heart cutout as well. So you can drag this one and you can see that sort of heart cutout. You've got one with like a flame like this. You can go and experiment with all of these. You just keep dragging them, find one that you like. Right, there's loads of different ones. I kind of like the movement ones. These ones are pretty good. There's one that I use quite often. Let me try and find it for you quickly. I think it's in shapes. It's this one here. So normally I use this one here. Let me drag it, and it's got this sort of half circle shape and it kind of fades across like this. And then when I do the next transition afterwards, I'll use this version which fades in the opposite direction. So for now, maybe we'll use these two in this tutorial example, right? So far we've got one video clip on the timeline and we've got this transition. And now I want to show you how to edit, how to cut some video content because maybe it's too long or you want to get rid of a piece in the middle or do something like that. Okay, so let's try and cut this video clip. So really when I'm cutting, I want to be zoomed in quite far away. To be fair, it's entirely your choice. You can hold down the control key and zoom right out and do your cutting, or you can zoom right in. But typically you'll be quite close to the video clip. You'll zoom in because you want to cut at a certain point, right? So we know this first video clip was 10 seconds long and there's a 1 second duration transition. So really we want to scrub across to the timeline where it gets to 20 seconds, right? So if I keep scrubbing, you'll see that it says 0020 here. So this is 20 seconds long duration. So the first video clip and the second video clip will be of the exact same duration now. So I want to cut right here. So we use the cutting tool here. Click this split object. So when we click it, we've now got one video clip here and we've got a second clip here. And we can just click on that clip and hit the delete key to remove it. So now we've got two video clips that are exactly the same duration. So if we zoom out a little bit, we've got this first video clip and then we've got another video clip afterwards, and they're both 10 seconds long, which is why we've got a 20 second duration. You see 20 seconds here. Alright, so now we can go ahead and drag in our third video clip. Let's go back to import and we'll click on this one, this sunrise, I believe it is. Let's drag that onto the timeline. And when we drag it, instead of dragging it with a gap, we can drag it so that it snaps exactly to the end. See, I've accidentally dragged it below. Let's move the timeline and I'll explain what these other rows are for a little bit later. So if you drag it and it's below here, for example, you can just drag it to the top of the timeline and then we can drag it and snap it here. And then we can see that transition, right? So again, we want to transition on a crossfade. So we know that the end of this second video clip was 20 seconds. So really we want to go back to 19 seconds. If I drag back roughly, you can see it's 1827 here, right? 1827. So I'm going to use the arrow keys, the right arrow key on my keyboard to get it to exactly 19 seconds. You can just use the left arrow key and the right arrow key to get very specific timeline, right? 19 seconds exactly. Now I can take this video clip, move it backwards and then drag it forwards and it will snap exactly 1 second duration. So we want our transitions to be of equal durations, 1 second here, 1 second here. Now we can go back to templates here, and we can drag this second type of transition, which will transition in the opposite direction. So we drag and drop it here. And now that transition is going from this side this way, right, from right to left. And the first one went from left to right. This one's going from right to left. So I'm going to use these two types of transitions, but feel free to go and experiment with all these different types of transitions. Look at all of them, right? There's some really nice, there's some crazy ones in here, like these airplane ones. Let's drag that on here and just show you as an example. Now that one won't work very well, and I'll explain why. Let's go and put this this other transition back. Let's go back and let's drag this one here. Now, when you if I went to this one here, for example, and I dragged it onto the timeline, can you see this grey box? This grey box is really wide. Can you see how wide it is? This represents the expected duration for this transition. Yeah, for this particular transition type. So you can see that it's quite wide. So if you compare it to our 1 second transition above, this transition is probably 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe about 7 or 8 seconds. So our overlap would need to be 7 or 8 seconds. So let me just show you that as an example. I won't be using it, but I'll show you as an example. What we'll do is go back to import and we'll drag and drop this next video clip to the end of the timeline here, right? And when we do the transition for the crossfade for this particular clip, I'll need to drag it much longer, like something like this, yeah? So the duration, the transition is much longer between them, and the longer the transition, the longer that fade will be between them, right? But if I go back to the template and click on this 3D Morph Basic, when I drag and drop it now, you can see it kind of matches the timeline now, right? Our timeline's a little bit too long, but if I drag it over, it will now transition across. And you can see the folding of the plane, and it's going to do all that good stuff and then fly off into the distance, yeah, like this. So some transitions require longer durations, some don't require longer ones. Normally these ones here, these sort of shape ones, these morph ones, they require longer durations. So when you drag and drop onto the timeline, you can see this one's much shorter, right? The grey box. So if I wanted to use that one, I could drag this transition so that it's much shorter duration and then drag and drop it onto the timeline here. So it says you have selected a transition row with 10 individual fades. Here multiple 3D fades are inserted, existing transition effects may be replaced, and the object length are adapted. Click OK to continue. You can change the number of 3D fades to be inserted beforehand in order to limit the repeat of transition rows. So I've actually not used this one before, so let's just click OK and see what happens, right? We'll click OK. Let's go back here, click play. And then here you can see what's going on, right? Here you can see that sort of transition there. It's like a wooden desk in the background. And if you're doing some sort of nice, I don't know, it's really down for you to experiment. For me, what I'm going to do is click on this video clip and hit the delete key. And when I do that, it will remove that transition at the end for me, right? And what we want to do now is edit the second video clip so that it's 10 seconds long. And because we're working in 10-second increments, we know that this one finished on 20. So I'm going to scrub across to the timeline, and this one should finish on 30 seconds here. And then we can click the split clip and delete this one. So let's speed things up a little bit. Let's go back to import, and we've used these 3 video clips. Let's drag this one onto the timeline, and then we want to move this timeline cursor back to 29 seconds. 29 seconds, it sits at 29:07. So I use my left arrow key to get it onto 29 seconds, drag this across, and I'll go back to template. We'll go back to shape, and I've used this one last. I want to use this one, drag it onto the timeline. So I'm going to do some really quick editing. This is how I would normally do it, quite fast. So we know that we're on 30 seconds here, so we want to be on 40 seconds. You can see across here, right here where my mouse cursor, it says 40 seconds, right? So I can left click here, and that will take me close to 40 seconds. I'm 41:01, so I'm going to hold down the left arrow key. You can hold it down to move quicker, or you can tap it to get it to 40 seconds. Click the cut, select this last part, delete it. Then we drag our next video clip onto the timeline. I'm doing this a bit quicker because we want to get onto some other example work in this software, right? So I'm going to drag back to 39 seconds, take this clip, overlap it, go back to template, and I'll use this transition this time. So I'm just alternating my transitions. We'll close this, we'll stop it, let's move back, let's move forward. So we know on 40, so now we want to be on 50. So drag it across, and I'm looking in the top left hand corner where it gets close to 50. So it's at 50.01. So I'm going to go back with the left arrow key, click it, cut it, delete this end part, go back to import, drag this clip onto the timeline. This one might not be 10 seconds in duration, so we might have to just accept that it's not going to be 10 seconds long. So what we'll do with this one, let's see where it finishes. It finished on 20 frames. So I'm just going to cut off the last 20 frames. So let's go back. So it's 58 exactly. Let's cut it, get rid of this end part, and then now we're on 58. So we want to go back to 57, right? So hold down the left arrow key, get it to 57. Then we'll go to, in fact, we didn't need to do that, but we can do it that way. We'll drag this balloon clip down, and then we can drag it so that it overlaps, and then we'll move across the timeline. But before we do that, let's see, we didn't set the overlap here, right, on this one. So here's a good example. We forgot to set the overlap here. So let's go back, and we see we're on 50 seconds here. We're going to drag back to 49 seconds, 49. And I'm going to left click outside. I'm going to hold down the left mouse button to select both these pieces of content. This one and this video clip, they're separate pieces, right? Now I can drag both of them and it will overlap correctly here. Let's see what we did here. We did right to left, so we want left to right on this one. Let's go to template, left to right. Let's see what we're doing here. Left to right here. And then on this one, we want right to left on this transition, right? Like this. So let's keep moving across the timeline. Let's see where this one ends. So let's see, we'll try and cut it as close as possible to, so we want to cut it at, it ends on 2:19, right? So we want to end it on 02 here. Let's go back 02. So it'll just be a nice flat round number, 2 seconds. and let's cut it. So it'll be, yep, let's cut it there. Let's delete this. Let's go back to the video clips, and we drag this one in onto the timeline, and we want to do the transition now, right? So we're going to go back 1 second. So hold down the left arrow key, and we'll go exactly 1 second, drag it across. The last transition was right to left, so this one we want it to be left to right, this one. So let's see, let's drag across, and on this video clip we're finishing on this one we're going to finish on 2 seconds over, right? So this one, we want, this particular clip is at least 10 seconds or longer, so we want this one to be on 1:12, because it will be 2 plus 10 seconds will be 12, right? So this one will be a 10-second clip. So let's move it to 12 here. Right, let's save our work. Let's click the cut tool. Let's delete this. Let's get in our next video clip, which will be, in fact, we're done, right? So this is the last video clip. This is the last one. So normally at the end of the video clip, we do a fade to black. So to fade to black, what we do is drag this timeline. So it's on 1:12, so we want it to be on, let's do a 1 second fade, right? So we want it to be on 1:11. And then when we roll our mouse over, let me try and zoom in here a little bit. Let me see. So if I hold down the shift key, I can zoom in on the height, and if I hold down the control key, I can zoom in on the width, right? Or the length. So when I hold down the shift key, I can zoom in. I'm only doing that just to show you there's a little white dot in the top corner here of this particular video clip, right at the end. And if I select it and drag it, I can snap it to the timeline so that we've got a fade to black now of 1 second. If I go back, I'm going to hold down the shift key and zoom back out again, because I never zoom in that close normally. Normally I have it zoomed out to about here. And if we click play, it's going to fade out like this. Right, it's going to fade out. So if we go to the very beginning, and if we drag across the timeline to 1 second, let's get it to 1 second, which will be exactly here. This is 1 second duration, you can see at the beginning. We can then fade from the beginning, so we can grab that same handle and fade it in at the beginning. Let's go back and click play. Now we've got a nice fade, and we'll have all our transitions set up between each one of the video clips. So we've done quite a lot here. Some of these video clips have audio. So if I scrub across the timeline, let's see, I think this is the very last one. Here, if I click play, you can see you can see it over here. When I click play, you'll hear, you may not be able to hear it, but you'll see the UV meter moving here. You can see that, right? So I don't want any audio on any of these video clips. So to fix that, what we can do is, let's click on this particular video clip, this one, and when we click on it, there's this little let me zoom back in again so it'll be closer, a bit closer. So at the bottom here, there's a little handle that I can grab, and if I drag it all the way down to the bottom, that turns the audio off, right? So there's a little handle at the bottom there. If I click it again and drag it up, that will increase the audio or decrease it. So sometimes normally it's set to 0 dB. So it'll be set to 0 value here. Where's 0? Right here. So this is just what the video clip original audio. But you can drag it up to increase the audio, or you can drag it down to decrease. I'm going to show you another way to do that afterwards. But what I'll do is go to the first video clip. I'll hover over it. Let's click on it. Let's just hold down the control key and zoom out a little bit here. And this one doesn't have any audio, so there's no option to drag, right? But this one has audio. Let's just, if you drag something by accident, press Ctrl Z to undo that drag, yeah? So if I drag it by accident, just press Ctrl Z or Ctrl Z to undo, yeah? And if I drag over this, I know that there's no audio. It has an audio track, but there's no actual audio in there because the UV meter is not moving. But I'll click on it anyway and drag it down, and then we'll move to the next video clip, which is this one. I'm just going to drag them all down just to make sure there's no audio, because we're going to put our own custom audio onto this particular content. If you click on it, there isn't one there, then it means there's no audio there, right? And we click here and we've done it. So these are all been set to no audio, no, basically muted the audio, right? Let's save this. Okay, I'm going to hold down the shift key again and then zoom back out on the height, because I like to see more timeline rows here, right? These are layers basically, right? So normally in like graphic design software, normally the top layer sits at the top, and then the layers below will be layers underneath that top layer, if that makes sense. But in video editing software, it works the other way around. So this is actually the very bottom layer, and this one below it, this layer here will be sitting on top of this layer, right? So if I were to drag a video clip and drag it down to here, for example, now you can see all of that content has been overlaid, right? You can see I can't see the snow effects and all that other stuff that was here before. But what's the purpose of that? Because if we want to add a title, like some sort of text inside of our video content, and we can drag it to the bottom, this layer here. So let's go ahead and what we can do, there's a couple of ways to do this, right? So we'll go to template, and inside template options, we'll see, let's see, where are they? We've got title templates here, right? Title templates. So you've got font basic, you've got opening and closing, you've got subtitles and captions, and you've got all of these different examples of titles, right? Dynamic ones. Let's just go for font basic at the moment. So you've got these different font styles, and you can actually change these font styles, so I won't worry about it too much. But let's take something that is quite easy to read, an easy font. Let's see something, I'm going to call this something like places on planet Earth, this video clip, or something like this. So let's find a nice font that will be easy to read. Let's try something like maybe this font, right? So what I'll do is select it and drag and drop it onto the timeline. So it says Hollywood. Actually, I don't really like that font, but it doesn't matter. After you drag and drop it, if you don't like the font style, you can change it in here in this drop down. And I've got lots of different fonts installed. You can see loads of tons of them, right? So maybe we'll just try this Noto Serif, let's say, for example. That one isn't great either. So we'll just randomly pick something. Let's find something. Let's say this one here, right? Myanmar text. This one looks pretty good. It's a nice clean font. And we can increase the font size. So we can increase it. Let's say we set it to something like this sort of size. Let's say around 40, right? 40. And if we were to left click outside, let's just left click here. And if we drag over the timeline, we can see what that font looks like a bit more clearer. But we can then click the tick icon here, and then it will accept it. Right, so if we see it like this is Hollywood here, and then it just drops out. So it's not a very good title, is it, really, if you think about it? So what we want to do is move across the timeline to 1 second. Because remember, our fade at the beginning of this video clip above finishes on 1 second. So I'm going to drag this so it snaps exactly at 1 second, and then I'm going to drag across to 2 seconds, right? So I drag the timeline to 2 seconds. Let's see, let's get it onto 2 seconds here. You can see it's 2.01, so I'm going to use the arrow key to get it on 2 seconds. And now we can fade our title as well, right? We can fade it. So now we've got this clip coming in, and now our title will fade in. But the title is a bit hard to read, so let's click on it, and then we can do things like set it to, let's see, we can do, let's see, what's this, bold? We can make it bold. That makes it a bit easier to read. We can make it italic. We can underline it if we want. We can change its alignment, right? We can change the alignment. We can do things like add a border around it, and that border might be, say, red color. Let's say, for example, let's do red. So you can see it's like got a red border around it, and you can change the border width, so you can make it more thick. I'm pretty sure there's a way you can hold down the left mouse button and drag up and downwards, right, to change the border width. So I mean, these are things that you need to experiment with. These are not like things I'm saying to do, but I think the border like this but black will be better. So if we set all of these down to 0 values, that will be black, and we can click here and we can drag, right? Let's just see, what did I do? Filled. So if you turn this off, it will be like hollow. I think actually that looks pretty good, right? So whether you want the content to be filled, you can change the color of the font. So here you can change the color, right? You can maybe make it green, you can make it whatever color you want. and this is quite a useful tool for selecting colors. So you can drag this handle around the edge to change the main color, and then you've got this box inside to change like the you know, that particular red shade, you could call it. Yeah, so you might do it something like this, but let's go ahead and left click here. I actually want it not to be filled because I think that looks better, but I think we need to make the border thicker, maybe around here, something like this, and I think that looks pretty good. The text inside is wrong, right? So it says Hollywood Hills, doesn't mean anything, so we're going to call it something like Planet Earth. So you just type your text above here, right? And I reckon we can make it a bit bigger because it's quite small there. So let's drag this up and make it a bit bigger. Do something like this. Let's set it to around 50, right? Let's say 50. You can actually double click in here and type in the value, and you can then go and experiment with. There's some animation options here from like left to right. So if we were to click play, then it will slide from left to right. You know, you can do that, but there's actually other ways to do that, but we're going to just click none for now because we just want it centered. Let's turn off the fill, and I want it to be like this. So the duration of this particular title is quite short, so we want to increase the duration. So if I drag here, I can maybe, let's drag it across the timeline. Let's say 1 second is for the fade, right? And we want it to be there on the screen for maybe 2 seconds and then fade out. So we know that we're on, let's just drag across here. Let's see, at 2 seconds is where it's fully faded in, right? So we're going to go to 4 seconds and we need 5 seconds in total. I'm going to drag across the timeline to 5 seconds, which is here. And you don't have to be so timeline specific, but when I do cutting and editing, I like to be very specific. So it says 5 seconds. So if I drag this across, I know that is 5 seconds, right? And if I drag this timeline back to 4 seconds, let's set it to 4, then I can drag this from here and drag this handle back and place it here. Now I've got a 1 second fade in, it will stay still for 2 seconds and then fade out, right? That is the style, the style that I wanted, right? So if I drag across here, and then it will fade out like this. So that's just a basic example of a title, and then you can, now here's the smart thing you can do, right? Let's say that you wanted to reuse this title. You can just click on it, press Ctrl C to copy it, drag across the timeline maybe to this, and then you can drag it here, then you can select it and move it across and snap it here, for example, on this transition, right? So if I move across, then it will transition and you can see like it says Planet Earth, but it wouldn't say Planet Earth on this one. It maybe say something like, let's just say rocks, for example, yeah? Rocks, these are like rocks or canyon or something. So now you can just reuse that title in a different place on your content, right? So that's kind of the idea. And you can go and experiment with these titles. So let's show you some other examples of titles. Let's leave these two here as an example. Let's just save this and we'll drag across the timeline. Let's go to this particular point and we want to add another title. So there's other types. If we go to template, and if we go to a good one is like dynamic titles. So let's say something like this one here. Let's drag and drop that one onto the timeline, right? If we click on it and we just type in something like, I'm just going to type in example of a red sunset, and you can change the font style again down here. You can change it. I'm just going to leave it as is default. Let's just scrub back on the timeline and click play, and then you can see example of a red sunset, and it would do the whole transition for you, right? The only thing that I would do probably on this one is just drag this handle back to like roughly 1 second, roughly around here, and then it will fade out at the end. So if we click play again one more time, you'll get this nice pre-made animated title. And then if you want to click on the middle, normally I'll click somewhere in the middle or towards the end, let's say around here, so I can see it quite clearly. Then you can make it, you can like change the settings for it. You can make it bold or italic depending on the font. You can change the size of it. You can make it a bit bigger. You can change its color. So let's say we want to make it maybe white, well, it's actually white already, so maybe we'll make it blue, for example. Here we can change it to like a blue color. Let's just drag this one. We can make it blue, but I think white looks pretty good on this background. And then let's see, what else can we do in here? We can just change the font. Alright, so we used some other font before. I'm not sure which one we used previously, but let's just set it to this one, for example. Yeah, we'll click here, click play. Now you've got this nice sort of animated version, right? So you can pre-make your ones, you can make them yourself in a similar way, or you can use the pre-made ones here. And you need to go and experiment. There's so many different ones in here, it's hard for me to go through each one and show you what they all do, but you can click the play button and you can see like this is like a good one for at the ending of your video clip for like credits. Yeah, you've got other ones here that you can go and experiment with. You've got ones like with glow effect, you've got ones that just kind of fade like this. Yeah, you've got loads of different ones for you to go and experiment with. So it's down for you to go and pick the ones that you like. You've got these 3D examples. You've got loads and loads of different. I can't go through all of them. There's too many. Some of them look pretty cool. I often use this one here, or this one. Kind of zooms in and then fades out into the distance when it's done. Right? That's a nice one to use as well. Okay, so for now, what I'm going to do is just delete this title. This one here. I just want to delete it. This one. Let's just get rid of it. And I'm going to delete this one here. I just want to have the original title at the beginning because that's probably how I would you know, do it myself, or you could have a different title on each one. That's for you to now go and experiment with. Now let's say, for example, let's take this this first video clip. Let's just say that the colors weren't quite correct in here. Yeah? Let's click on it and go to effects. And in effects, you can adjust the brightness, you can adjust the color. There's lots of different options in here that you can adjust the video content, right? So let's go to brightness, and we can make it a bit more darker. We can make it a bit more brighter. You can adjust the contrast, so you can like bump up the contrast to make it look like it's got a bit more detail. And you can experiment with the brightness here. So let's just say this is like color correction, right? Typical color correction. And you can increase the HDR gamma as well. This one's quite nice. Sometimes you can get some nice little shadows and stuff, and the HDR blur. You can experiment with these and see what they do. You can see what it looks like, and if you click this button up here, this one will reset everything, so you can see what it looks like now. If I click it and reset it, you can see it's quite faded out. It's a little bit faded, the content. So what we might do is increase the contrast to improve the lights and darks, yeah, between the content. Before it's a bit like wishy-washy, a bit faded. And then we can increase the HDR gamma or decrease it. It's up to you. Maybe we'll set it around here. And then the blur effect for the gamma. So if I set it right down, it looks a bit washed out. But as I increase it, our darks become a lot more darker and our lights become a little bit brighter. And then you've got a nice sort of clear distinction between the shadows and the lights. You can go to color, and then you can just go and change the saturation. If you want to increase or decrease, you can make it like grayscale, or you can increase it. That's too much, right? So we'll set it to, the color wasn't too bad actually, but then you can go and change the hue here, right? The different hue here, and then you can change the actual individual colors. So you can add more red or green or whatever you want. Let's just go to the top and click here. I just want to undo that because I think the colors are pretty good. And you can go and experiment with all these different options. I'm going to show you like chroma key and other stuff a little bit later. You can actually change the duration and speed of a video clip, but probably what I'll do is just go through this main basic tutorial for you today, and I'm going to go and create separate individual tutorials for a lot of these different options. There's quite a lot to explain in all of this, and some of these tools are better used for different purposes, so it's better I go and explain these tools in individual tutorials. So this main tutorial will be focusing on just basic editing, basic color correction, adding titles, adding transitions, so you can get up to speed. So what's missing from this video clip? Right now we're missing something quite important. Okay, so let's go and add some music to this video. Right, so we can go and download some music and let's add that to this particular clip. So let's go ahead and open up the web browser, and we'll go to YouTube. YouTube free audio library. So I'm going to type in YouTube free audio library and click here. And whenever you're using audio, it's always good to download audio from a copyright free source, right? If you start downloading audio from any random place, and then you might get copyright issues. So in here you can see search by filter, and we can go to mood, for example, and in here we want something quite calm. We want calm, so we click calm and we click apply. So now you've got all of these different sort of calm style audio tracks. So let's click play. And I quite like the sound of that. So to download it, we'll click this, download audio track. I'm just going to drag this to the side and just minimize this for a minute and open up this folder, because I want to drag this audio clip that I've downloaded here into the folder. So now we've got access to that video clip in Movie Edit Pro. So when we open up Movie Edit Pro, and if we go back to import, we can see this new audio track is here, right? And we can edit the levels and do stuff like that. Again, this is probably a bit advanced, so maybe I'll look at showing you that in future tutorials. But for now, I just want to, let's just undo that. Let's just see. So really what I've done is I've moved down the timeline. So here you can drag up and down, and we want to add the audio clip onto the third line here, So here you can see the waveform, right? And if you want to reduce the audio so you don't want it to be too loud, you can just left click and drag down, and maybe you can set it to something like -6 dB or something like this. And we can go back to the beginning, click play, and here you can see the time and the audio. You might not actually hear it now, but here's the audio clip playing in the background. So once I've finished this tutorial, I'll actually export this video clip and add it to the end of this tutorial, so you can actually watch the final video clip with the audio and everything. But if we scrub right to the end, you can see the audio clip goes way off to the end. We don't want that, right? So what we're going to do is move to the end of the timeline here where the last video clip is, and we'll click on the audio, make sure the audio is selected, not the video, make sure audio is selected, and then we can cut it, use the cut tool, and then select this end part of the audio and delete it. And normally you want a nice sort of fade out transition for your audio, so we'll grab this handle just like we did with the video. We can drag it across, but we drag it quite far, maybe, you know, to somewhere about here, so the audio will gradually fade out towards the end, right? Gradually fade out, and normally I'll do a little fade in at the beginning here. So let's just fade that in something like this, about half, so a 5-second fade, and we click play, and the audio will fade in nicely. Yeah? And you'll hear that when I export this later, and we'll hear the audio fade in and fade out towards the end. So our total duration of our clip is 1 minute and 12 seconds so far. You can keep an eye on the duration up here, for example. Yeah. Okay, so as I mentioned before, this is really like a beginner's tutorial just to get you up to speed. So if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, and if you check out my YouTube channel, over the next sort of few weeks, I'm going to be making tutorials on all the different elements, all of these different tools inside of Movie Edit Pro. It's a bit too much to try and do that in one tutorial. This video will probably be, you know, a couple of 3 or 4 hours long if I try to explain absolutely everything. So I'll make individual tutorials, specific ones for chroma key, for masking, for all of these different tools, just explaining them individually. Quite a lot in the template. There's quite a few things in here we haven't really looked at yet. So, stuff like you know, the movie templates and intros and outros and design elements and stuff like that. But you need to go and experiment. Obviously there's a Movie Edit Pro manual, so you can go and look at the manual and read a lot about this. But the goal of this tutorial was to get you getting content into Movie Edit Pro, being able to mute audio clips or reduce the audio clip, being able to do some basic color correction, adding in your fades, adding in your cross transitions, adding in titles, adding in audio, fading and fading it out. So really the last thing we need to do now is export the video clip. So there's a few different ways to do that. You can use the batch processing, but again, I'll make a separate tutorial explaining batch conversion. Normally when I do video editing, whether it's in Adobe Premiere Pro or Movie Edit Pro, I will normally edit loads of video content like this. So I'll normally edit 5 or 6 different video clips, and then I'll batch export them all in one go. But we'll look at that separately. For now, we're going to click on this little arrow here. This arrow here, and this allows us to get the exporting tool up, and I'm going to click output as video file. I'm not outputting it from mobile devices, I'm going to output it as a video file, but you can upload it to like Vimeo and other sort of locations. But for now we just say output to video file, and it's asking us what is the quality. Do we want to export it for web only, so it's really low resolution? Do we want it DVD quality? Do we want it to be 720p? We want it to be fully fat HD 1920 by 1080 because that was our original source file, right? If you're doing editing for a customer, for example, and you just want to send them an example of the video clip before you do your final export, you can maybe set it to HD quality 1 and it'll be a smaller file for you to send. So in here you've got Windows Media, you've got MPEG 2 and you've got MPEG 4. MPEG 4 is like MP4 file. So typically when I edit content and upload it to YouTube, I'm exporting it as an MPEG 4 file. So I'm going to click the save button, and inside that same folder, Movie Edit Pro is going to open and it's going to name the file exactly what the original project file name was, right? Because you can see up here, where is it? Tutorial, right? It's called tutorial example, so it's called tutorial example.mp4. Let's click the save button and let's click save video here. And this pop-up will show, and it says that it's exporting the video clip. So it's going to take a bit of time for that to export, so I'll pause the video and we'll come back and check it once it's completed. Okay, so the video clip has finished exporting, so let's just go ahead and save the file, and we minimize this, and then if we close this browser, let's just look inside this folder, and normally the largest file is going to be your completed video clip. So we just set this here, we can see the video clip here. So I'm just going to play this at the end of this this tutorial so you can see how the video came out and see if you like it, and then you can go and experiment with Magix Movie Edit Pro. Don't forget, if you're going to purchase this software, check out my affiliate link in the YouTube description. It would be good if you can use that link, then I'll get a little commission every time you purchase this software. And also I'll be doing many more tutorials. I've done lots on Magix Movie Edit Pro 2020, so I'll put some links in the YouTube description. Movie Edit Pro 2020 and 2021 are very similar. There's some better features in 2021, so I'll be looking at those separately as well. But a lot of the concepts are similar, so I'll put some links in the YouTube description to lots of video tutorials I've already done on Movie Edit Pro 2020, and you can watch those tutorials and apply the same logic to 2021. Let's go ahead and close this folder. That's the end of this video tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you in the next DCP web tutorial.